Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours, where we answer your questions 7 days a week, media questions mostly. And we are here with a special guest today. Kyle McCumber, who is the founder of Bitrig, is here. And I have to say that I got really excited. I don't know how X works. I don't know why we see what we see. But I saw a random tweet like, hey, I'm launching this thing. And I opened it up, and I just really felt like it was the app I always wanted, which is this app that allows you to build your own apps on your iPhone to solve your own problems. And so I got really excited about it, and I wanted to bring him on the show to talk a little bit more about it. So I just want to welcome Kyle to the show. Welcome, Kyle.
Thanks, Alex.
Tell us, how did you get here? Like, how did you get to a point where you thought you'd build this kind of app?
Yeah. So I'm a longtime Apple fan and Apple veteran. Actually, I learned to program in college, and I joined Apple right around when in the 2011 or so, iPhone was like so exciting, and I wanted to work on it. And then I was at Apple until April this year. And as I saw all the AI stuff kind of getting more and more like exciting and playing with ChatGPT and saw how good it was getting at writing programs. At Apple, I was working on like the UI frameworks. And so that's the APIs that we make for developers to build apps. And the idea that AI was actually writing programs and getting really good at writing programs was really intriguing. And we had this idea that we could build an AI program to write programs for your iPhone, on your iPhone, that would make the kind of joy we always felt in building programs like that much more accessible to a much wider variety of people, anyone with an iPhone in their pocket. And so in April, me and a couple of my buddies left Apple, and we started working on Bitrig.
Oh, it's so cool. Can you show us how it works?
Yeah, let me share my phone right now.
Yeah, I've always felt like we were close. You have Automator, you have shortcuts, and I was like, but there's somewhere between shortcuts and Xcode. It's like I can do little things or I can write code, but I always felt like there needed to be something in between, and it really feels like Bitrig is potentially that thing. Yeah,
so this is Bitrig. I've got some apps here that I've been building. I can go into here's a really cute one. I built this at my son's birthday party with my niece. We can see I just said, make me an app that lets me track how many hugs Amelia's given me. I've got it right here. Every time she hugged me, I just added another one, and it was really cute. When I got to 10, it says, wow, so many hugs. Really funny. A more involved app, this was shared to me by a family friend, which is really cool. He built this app to kind of help him track and build like exercises. So he's like, I'm going to work on my arms today, muscle building. I want to go for 30 minutes. I want to use the pull-up bar. Make me a workout for that. And so it'll bring this up. And so that's cool. And so kind of to give you an idea of what this looks like.
And when it brings that up, is it actually then using more AI to design the workout? Or is it? Does it have
I don't think this app is, but that's something you could do. Right. So let me build an app right now.
Okay.
To give you an idea what it feels like. So I'm going to the beach this weekend, and I don't want to get sunburned. So make me an app that lets me log my sunscreen and send me a notification reminder so I don't forget to reapply based on the UV index at my current location. So I'm going to send that prompt. We're going to go talk to the AI servers, and it's going to write some native Swift code. And this is kind of the language of the iPhone. And so there's all these capabilities that come on the iPhone. And so Bitrig is writing the program that's going to go and
as opposed to like a generalized solution, this is really, it has all the documentation for Swift. It has everything else that so it's trained for Swift specifically.
Yeah, I mean, the AI models are incredibly surprisingly good. And if you I only learned to program in college, and I was really surprised to learn that computer programs are just like text. Like you could type a computer program into a Word document, and
right.
Our app's back, right? And it's doing all this stuff, right? It's alive. It's doing these things. but it's just actually text you typed, and you could type it into Microsoft Word, and that's all it is. And so just like ChatGPT will write out a message to you, it can write out code. And so all the AI is doing is writing out text that is a software program, and then the challenge was to actually like run the software program inside the phone. And that's kind of what we're doing.
Well, and are you doing any specific training? I mean, does it has all the specific documents from because or does it not?
We've done a little bit. We've done surprisingly little of that actually right now. It's pretty good.
It's pretty good on its own.
It's pretty good on its own. The big AI labs like Anthropic and OpenAI do a really good job of training it. And so we add some guidance to kind of tweak it. But it's been surprisingly good. Out of the box.
So you had the app. Wait, we saw it just for a second. I think that it was so it built that app.
Here we go.
From a prompt.
Yeah, exactly. So you heard me kind of like say the prompt. This actually was an app that one of our friends built when they were at the beach, which is super cool. They were like, "Oh my gosh, I don't want to get sunburned," and they built this app for themselves. And normally you would send a lot of like follow up prompts and keep tweaking things. And so I went. Here's a much fancier version of like a similar themed app. That I built. And so this is kind of doing a similar thing, not very high UV right now in California.
But it's automatically, so instead of you setting it, it's going out and looking for it. Is that
what do you mean? Oh, yeah. So it's fetching the UV index from the internet. And one cool thing you can do is I hooked this up to my Apple developer account, which is what a professional developer uses to distribute their app on the App Store. And so for this app, a couple weekends ago, I went and I used Bitrig to go and kind of build a version of this and send it to Apple's servers, which is something you can do from the app. And if you've hooked this up, you can actually go, and if you've ever done any beta testing for apps, you can kind of use this test flight app, and I can now kind of install the app I built in Bitrig as an entire like app on my home screen right here, and I can go and launch it. And I've got a real like native iPhone app running here on my iPhone that I just built on my iPhone.
That's great. And I think that the thing that we were talking about this a little before the show, but I think one of the things that I'm just so excited about is this idea that so many of us have just little things we're trying to fix, and they're not they're not boiling the ocean. They're not the next Facebook, but they are things that they may turn into the next Facebook. Who knows? But they are. Things that we were talking about like counting chickens or we want to, for me, I have a sync generator that I've been kind of fiddling with, on a variety of different platforms to kind of figure out but I have all these little ideas, that I'm trying to put together. And the idea that I don't have to, that I can at least get a proof of concept together, if not an actual app that I can release. And I think the other thing is that a lot of people think, well, I was just going to put a lot of little apps on the App Store. I'm like, well, there is a lot of little apps on the App Store. And they're like, well, the code might not be as clean. I'm like, code isn't very clean for a lot of the apps.
It's totally true.
I think especially because this is all native Swift. So this is not, kind of hacked together somewhere. This is actually using the most forward code that Apple's producing right now.
Yeah, no, that's a big thing that we're doing differently. There are other apps that do similar things, but that's something we feel really strongly about, coming out of Apple as longtime Apple veterans, which is like, we really care about the polish and the look and feel of these apps. And there's all of this, all of Apple, there's thousands of engineers building capabilities into the iPhone every year, like super fancy stuff, like, vision, like being able to scan documents with your camera and identify the skeleton of a human body with the camera, all kinds of really cool stuff. And our goal is really just to get that to everyone's fingertips and use all like the raw SDK that the Apple engineers are working on. And so the way Bitrig writes the code is the same way a professional iOS developer you would hire would do it, or if you went and studied to become a professional iOS developer. Whereas kind of some of the other folks in this space are doing things that there's a lot of these like extra layers and you don't have access to the full power of the iPhone. And that's something we feel pretty strongly about in our technical approach.
Where do you see it going forward? What do you, there's always like three other things that you want to do that you haven't gotten to yet.
Yeah, no, at least three. I mean, like you were saying, like when you learn to program, you see all of these new opportunities in the world around you. You start to be like, oh, I could build an app to do this, or I could write a program to help me do this, and you have all these ideas. And so, I mean, we're really excited about kind of like bringing that like experience. It's a kind of a profound experience, I think, that many people have when they start building software for themselves. And so I, right now you can build an app on your phone. We have a companion app for kind of if you're actually like at your computer and you're like building a much larger app to kind of help you do that. That's in kind of private beta right now with some of our subscribers. So we're investing there. But I mean, I think where we see this going is I wouldn't be surprised if in 5 to 10 years, the majority of the apps on the App Store are actually built with a tool more like this than a traditional development environment like Xcode. You've got like, a couple million professional iOS developers. As you were saying, Alex, like there's a lot of apps on the App Store made by professional developers. They're not necessarily the best apps. Like they've got ads or they're just doing too many things. Like the person that makes an app now needs to know how to code, and they need to be like passingly familiar with the domain they're building for, and they need to have like passingly good taste. I think our hope is that what Bitrig does is it lets people who are more familiar with the domain and who have better taste now make the app. And so the way I say it is people talk a lot about AI slop, and I do think that is a big problem. But I think there's plenty of human slop on the App Store today.
And it's also, it comes down to the fact that programmers oftentimes will think of a good idea, but for a certain domain, as you said, for something that's there. And a lot of us that work in that area go, well, that's not how anyone would do that.
Exactly.
Like I get that you think that that's useful, or it takes me, there's little things like it takes me too long to get from here to here. Like, and now I won't, like we found that I build this, I worked on a Q&A system, and we found like adding one extra question reduced the impact by 90%. Like it was one thing, and we took that line out, and suddenly the gates opened up. But the programmer may not know that because they're not as deep into and then making changes. I happen to, in that Q&A, have a programmer that I can call and go, hey, can you make that change? And he knows he understands the domain, and we've been working on it together for a long time. But for little apps especially, I think it'll grow. I do agree with you that I think the people who are doing the work are going to be defining the tools much more effectively.
Yeah, and I think that's just going to mean more better tools. And if you play with this stuff today, it's already a really kind of magical experience, but this is the worst it's ever going to be. Yeah. The AI is only going to get even better at coding, and the tools like Bitrig are only going to become more full-featured in helping you realize your vision. And so I think if you've never programmed before, but you have an idea for an app, I think you should give it a try. And if it's not really clicking just yet, come back in a year. Like things are moving so fast in the space. New things become possible every 6 months, and I think it's just a really exciting, empowering like trend.
What's the cost? How does the pricing work?
Yeah, so with Bitrig, and this is something we haven't spent the most time thinking about, but just kind of trying to get it out there. Like I said, we launched on August 20th. But so you get kind of 5 free messages a day. And so you can use 5 free messages, and then if you've used up your messages, you can come back tomorrow and send 5 more. And if you want to just send kind of an unlimited number of messages, you pay $20 a month. Secret, don't tell anyone. In the app, we tell you get 100 messages for the month, but actually, if you pay for it right now, you just get an unlimited number of messages. We're not even enforcing it.
Noted.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Alex. You had a question.
Now, first of all, this is just blowing my mind that you can even do this on an iOS device, because I assumed when I first looked at the app that you would have to take the code and then go to a desktop computer like your Mac to compile it on Xcode, but it appears that you can, so this app will just run without doing anything?
Yeah, no, that was the big kind of technical insight, and why there's no one else doing it the way we did it is, so our team is the kind of creators of Swift UI. Swift UI is kind of the like UI framework, the primary like UI framework at Apple. And so we've really been pushing the boundaries of Apple's technology stack for like the past decade inside of Apple. And so when we saw the AI stuff happening, and we knew the technological kind of capabilities. We're like, oh, you know what? So the really nerdy details are Bitrig's actually has a custom Swift interpreter we've built so that we can take the code that's just the text coming down from the AI and run it on demand inside Bitrig itself. And so we've built almost this like virtual machine simulator inside Bitrig where we're executing the app. And then if you saw when I went and distributed it to TestFlight and downloaded it onto my home screen, that then took the same code, that's the code we were interpreting, and it did a full compile of it. I did a couple weekends ago, but I did a full compile on our server and then uploaded it to Apple. And then that was kind of the actual full release compiled version of it. And so that's the magic trick we're playing.
Yeah, and I think that the other thing is there's lots of things that people can experiment with, put it up on the App Store, and you're kind of like, oh, I got an idea, and you can see if it has any legs without having to spend, 8 weeks coding and testing and everything else.
And we have people who have actually put apps on the App Store from Bitrig already. There's I think assistant director in Los Angeles who made an app just for his job to help him manage some of his responsibilities, and he put it up on the App Store. I found out about that last week, and so people are doing some really cool stuff already and making their life or their job that much more better.
That's great. Jason, you had a question?
I am blown away. Okay, so there's a whole bunch involved in making an icon. How are you making icons?
Yeah, so it's not the highest tech thing right now, but one of the cool things is Apple's operating system comes with all of these little symbols built in, these glyphs. And so there's like a few thousand of these. And so one of the things we ask the AI to do when we're building the app is to give the app a name and pick an icon. And so it will choose from one of these like 4,000 icons that come built into the app. And then we'll pick a color and an icon. And so that's what we're doing right now. You can imagine, ChatGPT is pretty good at making icons also. It's a lot more involved and it takes more time. But that's a feature we've kind of considered adding in the future as well, is kind of do a full image generation via like the OpenAI API.
100%. We've got questions stacking up, so let's go ahead and jump into the questions.
This one is from Douglas Carmichael. With Apple integrating AI assistance into Xcode 26, what is the unique selling point for Bitrig?
Yeah, I think that I love that feature from Xcode. I think it's going to be great. I think I'm going to use it all the time. But I'm a professional programmer and I live in Xcode. I think the idea with Bitrig is if you're not a professional programmer, if installing Xcode and trying to figure it out sounds intimidating to you, you can just download an app on your iPhone and get started right away. And I would encourage everyone who's interested in this to also learn to program. A lot of the people that have been using it have been kind of like programming curious, like they've been wanting to make an app, but they've never gotten around to it. And the way to describe it is, if you want to learn to program, I don't think you have to do it this way, but if you want to learn to program, it's almost like language immersion. It's like going to Japan without speaking any Japanese. And now you've got like, you've built this whole app for yourself. And it's working and it's useful for your daily job or your life. And that's the best way to learn. It's just very intrinsically motivating, and you just start to slowly pick it up as you're kind of building out your app. And so, but going back to the question, like Xcode is for professional programmers. It's a very sophisticated piece of software. With Bitrig, we're trying to make the whole experience dramatically more approachable to someone who is not a professional iOS developer or is not even programmed before.
Next question.
This one's from Peter Belbin in Houston, Texas. Is there an option to use a technology that's platform agnostic so that Android and Apple apps can be created? Yeah,
that's not what we're focusing on right now. There are alternate apps that kind of do a similar thing that use a different technology, more like web technologies that can do that. And so you can search them out and find them. I think that's somewhere where we're curious to get in the long term. And the way we'd want to do that, which would be long in the future, is we'd build a native iPhone app, and then we'd simultaneously build a native Android app. And so just like to, again, nerd it out, like with Bitrig, we're writing native Swift code against the like native iOS SDK. For Android, we want to kind of simultaneously be writing native Kotlin against like the Android SDK.
Yeah, makes sense. Next question.
Alton Christensen in New York City, New York. If I build a health app, would the resulting data, a workout for example, show up in Apple Health?
Yeah, so one of the things that we're doing here is we are pushing the limits of App Store guidelines a little bit with our app. And so Health Kit integration is something we had, but we had to take out in order to comply with Apple's guidelines. So that's an ongoing discussion we have with them. A lot of people have built or tried to build apps that integrate with Health Kit because it's a very it's a great use case for Bitrig. It's a very kind of idiosyncratic, people's exercise and health and kind of workout stuff. But right now we don't have integration with HealthKit at the moment. So you wouldn't be able to sync data in and out of HealthKit.
Next question.
Roscoe Jones in Madison, Indiana. How much does it know about other apps on the phone? Can I customize another app I bought with Bitrig? Would that depend on the other developer?
Yeah, so you can't change another app with Bitrig, but there are a lot of Apple apps that come on the phone that have APIs for developers. And so any API that exists for a professional developer is also at your disposal, or it will be in the fullness of time. We're adding support for all of the APIs on the iPhone, one at a time. And so we're not through all of them yet. If you go into Bitrig, there's actually kind of I could show it right now if we're still sharing. If you go into an app, you can bring up this kind of question mark, and you can see, okay, this app is using Swift UI and UI Kit, and there's all these other frameworks we support. Like you can get the data from the address book from contacts and import that into your app. You can get the data from your calendar and import that into your app. You can display maps. You can get the photos out of your photo library and use that in your app. So Apple apps that come on the phone have APIs to get the data out and use them in the app you build with Bitrig, but a third-party app like an Instagram would not have an API that comes on the phone. Although there are APIs that you can hit on the web, like for the sunscreen app, we were hitting an API to get the weather from the web, and also you can use OpenAI's API to do AI and things like that.
Next question.
This one's coming from Telalik Lopez, Waterman in Phoenix, Arizona, USA. Does this work for iPad apps as well?
We do not have support for iPad yet. It's something that a couple of people have asked for, and I always ask kind of some follow-up questions about what their motivations are. And so we're interested in that, but we're going to keep talking to our users to understand the motivation. Is it that you want to build iPad apps, or do you want to build iPhone apps from your iPad?
Yeah. I think there's a lot of us. I mean, I have a lot of iPads. So a lot of us want to have an interface. We use them to build interfaces, which would be really useful. There's things I can do with my phone, but I know that I use the iPad a lot with custom interfaces, and Bitrig would make a lot of sense for me, because I would say, I want this app, and I want to be able to adjust buttons and move them around, and I want them to be able to find an IP and send OSC commands to it, or something like that would be the kind of thing.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. And I think one of the advantages of the specific approach we're taking, again, as Apple nerds, is it's the same SDK, the same APIs for iPhone and iPad and Vision and Apple Watch and all these things. And so it's work on our end, but it's definitely within the scope of possibility that we could have Bitrig on every Apple device making kind of apps for it.
Absolutely. Next question.
This one's from Douglas Carmichael. How do you handle App Store submission?
So if a user is trying to submit to the App Store, that's not a flow we've finished polishing yet. And so, but ultimately, I showed how I downloaded the app from TestFlight onto my home screen. And the way that was accomplished was from within Bitrig, you logged in with your Apple developer account and linked it to Bitrig. And then we built and uploaded your app to Apple's servers on your behalf. From that point, you can go to App Store Connect, which is Apple's portal, which is the same way a professional developer goes and distributes the app to their beta testers or distributes the app to the App Store. And so today you can do all of that from Bitrig and then going to App Store Connect. I think in the medium term, that can be a kind of intimidating process. And so we want to make that as smooth as possible. We want to let people get their apps on the App Store and make that as easy as possible. And so on our roadmap is kind of building out support to get further and further and all the way to the App Store from within Bitrig.
Next question.
Guy Cochran in Seattle, USA is asking, does this mean that Alex will finally release the telestrator app?
The delay on this release is not code. Juan C. Robles has got that nailed. Just a couple design and business decisions around it. So stay tuned. Next question.
This is one of my questions. Do you think we'll look back in a few years that this technology is analogous to what YouTube did to democratize broadcasting and what was once a high-friction industry to get into?
I don't know if I have the full YouTube history, but I think the word democratize definitely is resonant here. It's just so easy to get up and running writing code. And there's still, to actually get an app on the App Store, there's still a lot to do. There's a lot more involved than just writing the code. But writing the code used to be the hardest part. It used to be the biggest barrier to entry. You had to learn to program. And like the analogy to language immersion, my personal experience is it's so much easier to learn and so much more motivating to go the last 20% if you have something that's already working and you're using and you're getting fulfillment out of it. And so I do think it's going to make a really big difference. And I hope this whole new class of people who are, like we were talking about earlier, experts in their domain and who have great taste are the people that are really, making the majority of the apps on the App Store in the next 5 to 10 years.
It's interesting. I didn't really get my head around. I programmed a lot when I was younger, but then kind of stopped. And Xcode and that process and the whole coding and library process was something that I just never had enough time to really dig into. And I found that as soon as I started using ChatGPT with Xcode, I immediately started to understand all the processes because it was doing all the work for me. But I had it before it was integrated. I was like, okay, now what do I do? and so you start learning all the steps and what all these things mean and how to put the icons in and everything else. And I felt like that was very much like a physics first, what I would call physics first education experience, which is that you learn about the things before you start learning the math, and it's it's really great. Next question.
This one's from Talalik Lopez, Waterman in Phoenix, Arizona. I just asked it to build an app. It told me it was a complex request. Is there a limit of complexity in the free version?
So people are already downloading the app and testing it during the show. So that's great.
I love that. There shouldn't be. I would try again. The AI, if you've been using ChatGPT, the results are kind of non-deterministic and unpredictable. And so if you ever run across something, just give it another try. And so there shouldn't be a complexity limit. Once you start building very, very large apps, again, if you have experience with ChatGPT, it's analogous. As you build up a very, very long history, it can't always remember the things that you told it months ago in the kind of context and things like that. But for an initial prompt, if you ran into an issue, I would just make a new project and try it again.
With Bitrig, do you suggest kind of people start with something simple and then keep adding things? So instead of trying to describe the whole app and what it does, it's have it do this one thing and then ask it to do the next thing.
Both people are successful with both approaches. Mm-hmm. I personally like to just ask a small thing and then iterate on it. Full disclosure, that's easier if you're on the pro plan and you have unlimited messages. Right. But a lot of people do very sophisticated initial prompts, and it can go surprisingly far with just a kind of sophisticated initial prompt asking for kind of a complex app where it's all spelled out.
And the structuring it using I know we're getting back into code, but using XML or something like that. A lot of times in AI, is there a certain structure to the request that makes it better or worse? I saw what you did there was just plain language. I just wanted to.
Yeah. I generally just use plain language. Mm-hmm. When I'm making very, very complex and large queries to ChatGPT, I sometimes use the pseudo XML syntax to distinguish areas. And in our system prompt for Bitrig, we might use some of the pseudo XML just to kind of add the different sections. I've never used that to Bitrig for building an app though.
Right. Try it. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael asks, can Bitrig-generated Swift be brought into Xcode for refinement on the desktop?
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the things we felt was important is you're not trapped in Bitrig. The stuff you made is yours. It's your code. And so there's a little share button in the app, and anytime you can, so you can actually share your app to other people, and so you can kind of iMessage the app you made, and if someone has Bitrig, they can open it and run it on their phone in Bitrig. But also you can just export the code at any time to any device, and you can copy it and paste it into Xcode and go from there. And so we do have professional programmers also using Bitrig just to ideate on the go, and then when they get back to their desk, they'll bring it into Xcode and pick up where they left off. And so that's another great use case for it.
Next question.
Jason Bache in Albuquerque, New Mexico asks, I was impressed to see how many core Apple frameworks. Have you integrated core data?
We've not integrated core data. The data persistence story we have right now is a little simpler. So again, to get nerdy, Apple has this built-in kind of dictionary data storage called user defaults that's not as sophisticated as core data. It doesn't do a full relational database. And so it won't scale to like, tens or hundreds of thousands of entries. And that's what we're using right now. But we're looking at that kind of stuff in the future and making the data much more sophisticated and being able to hold, orders of magnitude more.
Next question.
This one is from Douglas Carmichael. What model are you using on the back end? Would you ever add an option for users to use their own paid model accounts?
Yeah, it's a good question. We're using Anthropic right now. With GPT-5 coming out, we were, tempted to work on that and integrate that, but it's not, the main request we've been getting from users has not been like, oh, I wish I could use GPT-5. It's more kind of, like other simpler things than the kind of like changing the AI models. I think as we learn from our users, we'll see what they want. My thesis going in was that, I love when I buy an Apple computer that they've done all the research and picked like the memory chips to use and the SSD to use. Like, I don't want to pick between Samsung and Toshiba and this and that and try and figure out the pros and cons. And so I think our philosophy right now is that like we're really trying to bring this to users who like don't want to dig into whether they should be using GPT-5 or Grok or Anthropic or whatever. And so right now our philosophy is we're going to build like an integrated experience where you don't have to know what AI model it's using. And so I think right now the answer would be we're going to kind of pick what we think is the best and just give you that option and not kind of let you bring your own. But I think we're going to also learn from what people are using Bitrig for, and that answer might change.
Next question.
Roscoe Jones in Madison, Indiana. If you were telling a student that wanted to learn to code, what would you have them study? I.e., are there any classes that would help with developing apps using Bitrig?
Yeah, I mean, I think the most important thing in terms of learning to code is if you have a personal project that you want to make, that's going to keep you motivated, and you're going to learn much more organically. And so I would start with whatever you want to make for yourself and learn the language and kind of programming frameworks that are necessary to build that thing. And so if it's an iPhone app, I have a lot of advice. If it's not an iPhone app, I'd say you should learn, Python or whatever the language or TypeScript or whatever the languages you need to kind of build what you want to build. And so if you're looking to make iPhone apps, I'd say get started with Bitrig, start making something, dive into the deep end, have an app that's kind of like already working for you. And then there's lots of great classes out there. I'm a big fan of like 100 Days of Swift, which is kind of like this kind of tutorial program for like making an app a day for 100 days. And I would recommend that if you were looking to learn more about how to program Swift iPhone apps.
Next question.
Kellogg Lopez Waterman in Phoenix, Arizona. Each time that you use a prompt to make change for the new version of the app, load immediately, or do you have to load it separately?
Trying to parse the question.
Yeah.
So every time that you make a prompt, it will rewrite the code for your app. It'll make kind of like, first it rewrites the whole app, and then it makes edits based on the subsequent prompts. And so like we were saying earlier, like, code is just text, like a Word document. And so what we're doing inside the app is we're taking the text and we're introspecting it, and then we're actually like executing and like putting the buttons on the screen and picking the specific colors. Like we're doing that based on the string. And so when you say a prompt, it writes the code, it comes in and edits subsequent code for subsequent prompts. And every time we make an edit, we then reinterpret the code and re-execute it. And so it will often kind of like reset your position back to like the home screen of your app if you make a subsequent change. And so it does kind of like reload it like for every subsequent prompt from where you are.
Next question.
Ronny Hofso in Tromsø, Norway. How can I, as a developer, get deeper understanding of what is actually possible to do with all the amazing APIs that is available on the different devices? To be able to make something unique, one would need to understand the abilities a device has.
Yeah, I mean, Apple, if you're a developer, I think Apple has a lot of great material out there. Every summer, there's WWDC, which you probably know from like the product announcemements, but also the rest of the week, there are sessions that Apple programmers are kind of talking about the work they've done that year and the APIs they've added to various frameworks. And we went through some of the frameworks. There's ways to get the contacts out of the Contacts app. There's ways to get calendar information. There's ways to get your photos. There are teams working on all of these frameworks at Apple, and they add new features every year. And the way that professional developers stay on top of that is they watch these WWDC sessions that are released. And so there's videos covering all this stuff and Apple documentation that is targeted at professional developers. And so it can be like technologically dense. But I do imagine when we're talking about like 5 to 10 years from now, and we're talking about the majority of the apps on the App Store potentially being built by like someone who previously wouldn't have been considered a professional developer, I think there's going to be probably like a parallel set of educational material where like you're going to want to stay up to date on all of the new functionality that's available on the iPhone. I think that if that's the state you're in now, I'd say there's the WWDC keynote, which does talk about a lot of the new features that are available on the phone. Like they talked this year about like the, I think probably the Apple Foundation models, like the on-device AI that's free to use, which is cool. And then there's also one more video called Platform State of the Union, which is more like the WWDC keynote for developers. And so I'd recommend watching that, where it's kind of an overview of all the new, most impactful APIs that were added in a given year.
It feels like there's almost a version of the WWDC sessions, which have gotten a lot better, by the way, since they're not live anymore. sorry. I used to be very connected to that, but they're much denser. They're much, now totally. and better shot and better audio and everything else. And so but I think that I feel like there's going to be a version of WWDC for Vibe coders that is explaining what all the architecture is, but not bothering to show us screen captures of here's what the code looks like. Like it's just totally agree. Here's what you can get to, here's what you can create, these are the things you can call for, these are the things you can ask for, but it's all very simplified because you don't need to go into that depth anymore for a certain level of a programmer.
Yeah, that's also what I'm predicting.
Yeah. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael asks, I tried building a MIDI Panic utility and the app said it didn't support CoreMIDI. Is CoreMIDI / CoreAudio support in the works? Yeah, so I showed that kind of screen where we show all the supported frameworks. And so you can search to see which frameworks are supported and which aren't, and there's a button, request support. And so the way we decide what to add is we look at all the votes for the frameworks, and the ones that have the most votes we add next. And so if you want CoreMIDI, which maybe after this
you may get a lot of requests because there's a lot of
jump
us
to the top. Yeah, vote for it now, and if it gets to the top, that'll be the next one we add.
That's great. Yeah, all the audio AV stuff. Of course, this is our environment. So I'm going to tell everyone watching, download Bitrig,
vote for CoreMIDI,
and vote for CoreMIDI. Let's see what we can do. Let's see what kind of power this organization has is to kind of move things forward. So let's try it out. Next question.
Jason Bache in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Of all the Bitrig customer stories you've heard about, which one stands out in your mind?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot that are really cool, and there's people like throughout the world using it, which is also amazing. You put something on the App Store, and we have people in South Africa, we have people in Portugal, we have people all across the United States. It's so cool. Like I do calls with some of our users to kind of learn where they are and what they're building. I was talking to Alex, like, one of my favorite users. I talked to him for like an hour and a half. He's in the middle of Illinois. He called me from his church. He's almost like, I think he described himself as like an island unto himself. Like, he doesn't have any other friends that are really into technology. And like, he found Bitrig, and he's been making all of these things for himself. He's made an app to help him like manage his like kids Cub Scout troop. He's made an app to count like the chickens because he's got like 4 kids, and they like let them out of the coop and they all get lost. And so he's made an app to try and track the chickens and track the eggs that they lay. And so like we were talking about, this guy was always curious about learning to program, but had never taken the plunge. And so he had all of these ideas like pent up in his head. And he's just been unleashed by Bitrig. And I love that. And he was telling me back, like the things I would have told someone when I first learned to program that was so exciting about it. And so that's been one of my favorite stories so far. And there are echoes of that story in a lot of the people I've talked to, which has been really fulfilling.
Next question.
This is one of my questions. Live on the show, I just successfully built a broadcast-style atomic clock app with a user settings section, and it got all of my requests right for the first time.
Let's see.
I got to show you this. This is amazing. Let's see if we can get it to come on.
No,
it's not.
Anyway,
behaving. Sorry, but yeah, it's
I'm
addicted.
Yeah. Yeah. It's one of the things is that a lot of times there's all these features that apps have, and most of us are like, oh, we don't need that. Now we can just write one that just does the version of it that we want.
Another great story. I was talking to someone from Cape Town, South Africa yesterday, and this person was like boxed in high school, and he's getting back into boxing. And he used to track all of his boxing workouts like with paper and pen, and he's been making himself an app to track it. And it's like he's got these very idiosyncratic things he wants to track about like his specific boxing workouts. It's like he wants to track his mood. He wants to track how he slept. He wants a place to write down notes for the opponents. Like, this guy's really tall. This guy's left-handed. Like, so he doesn't get punched too hard in the face. Very important things to track. And I totally agree. Like, when I go and look on the App Store, I do a very specific like workout. There's so many workout apps, and they all do everything. And I was like, you know what? I'd probably spend more time searching to find the app I want than it would take me to build the app now, which is just a profound like inversion of things.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I have this big dream of with workout apps of sensors, in everything that you're using, so that it just counts your reps for you, your weight for you, figures out, calculates the, your next workout based on, what it needs and everything else. And I feel like we're going to get there.
Totally.
And I feel like we're so close. So, Kyle, thanks so much for dropping in. This went a little longer than I expected. I promised you 15 minutes, but there's so many questions. So
no, this has been super exciting. Thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, thanks. And so Bitrig is the app. And you want to go download that on the App Store and request MIDI and CoreAudio, please. So that's the next step there, and we'll see what happens. All right, thanks, Kyle. We might bring you back on to talk about some stuff in the future.
All right, that's great.
All right, thanks, Kyle. See you. Now we're going to go to our more general questions. Go ahead and let's go to the next question.
All right. This one's from Andy Kokendorfer in Vieira, Florida, USA. TASCAM FR-AV4 giving sound devices a run for their money?
I think that's a big thing to say, that Tascam is giving sound devices a run for their money. I mean, I think that it's a 32-bit is one thing, but the one thing you have to look at is, or the other thing that you have to pay attention to is things like the quality of the preamps, the overall subsystems. So is it giving it a run for money? I don't know until I use it. I will say that the preamps on the sound devices products almost across the board are better than almost anything else I've ever used in a mobile recorder. So I think that is, and that makes a bigger difference for me than most of the other features. But it does look like a pretty solid. This is, and did we see a price on this one? I hate it when they hide it somewhere. somewhere there's a price here, and here are the prices: $1,000. So it's $1,000 for the problem really is, I think that if TASCAM has is staying, staying relevant in a lot of ways. But I think that there's so much competition between Zoom and sound devices and Deity, that I think that they have to kind of figure out making sure that interface works just perfectly. I do think it's interesting that they have a timecode generator and HDMI sync built into the system. That's an interesting puzzle. So I think the HDMI in and out or HDMI sync that's there, I thought that was something that's new. So if you needed something like that, and that's what they have to look at. They have to find features that are specific to their product, where you look at it and go, oh, well, I can't do it if I don't have that. So that would be the only thing that I would look at and maybe think about a little harder. Next question.
TJ Worrell in Minneapolis is asking, our router assigns device IP addresses based on the device's MAC address. Is there a way to accomplish this on a device, MacBook Air, without a built-in Ethernet port?
Good, Jason.
Absolutely. Just so you know, TJ, MAC stands for Machine Access Code. It doesn't mean Mac or PC or anything like that. In order to be on a network, every network device, including Wi-Fi, has a MAC address. And you can look for your MacBook Airs if you go into Wi-Fi and then, Wi-Fi settings, and then go into details. And then at the very bottom, there's a menu that says hardware on the left. And then on the right, it'll show you your MAC address.
Yeah, and then any of the adapters that you put on generally are going to give you a new MAC address. So you could literally have a computer with 2 or 3 or 4 MAC addresses, depending on how many different ways that it was attaching to the router. Next question.
This one's from Paul Vall, who's in Austin, Texas. What are the Black Magic Prodock sync issues?
What are the sync issues? I don't know. We don't know what the issues are right now because it hasn't been shipping yet. So, and when we get a hold of it, we will definitely take a look at it. We're hoping to get some in the next week or two. So stand by for that. What's cool about it is that it is going to be able to sync, give you Genlock and also timecode. And I have a lot of ideas. so I don't think a lot of people do, but I do. So I'm pretty excited about having these Prodocks. Excuse me, these Prodocks. So stay tuned for that. Next question.
Robert Linkram in Belmont Shore, California. Very unfamiliar with power over Ethernet type, PoE, PoE+, PoE++ signal paths. If a PTZ camera has an Ethernet port and carries the power, PTZ commands and video signal, once the PoE signal arrives at a switch, is there a device that can derive a HDMI or SDI/BNC?
Go ahead, Jason.
Okay, this is a complex question. PoE has nothing at all to do with the protocols of your camera. It is just power over Ethernet that is powering your PTZ camera. As far as the deriving, I'm sorry, I can't really follow that.
Yeah. So what happens is you have Ethernet, and then they're adding power to that Ethernet, and that's PoE. So that we use that for a lot of different things, powering mics and powering all and cameras and switches. Switches can be powered by, so there's lots of different things that can be powered by those by the PoE. And so but all of this is power, as Jason said. And so the next thing you need to know is, what is the protocol? Is it Dante over IP? Is it it can be NDI? It can be a lot of different things can be using, but the PoE itself is just power. To derive an HDMI or BNC signal, you're going to need to take that protocol and turn it back into that product. And there are plenty of boxes. Magewell makes those boxes. AGA makes those boxes. In some cases, Black Magic makes them if it's 2110. So there's a lot of different boxes that will take that signal and turn it back into something, but it's not something it just depends on what is the protocol that is coming across the Ethernet. What is the protocol you're trying to get to? Next question.
Paul Vall, who's in Austin, Texas. What is the key to having an effective online conference as part of a real-world conference?
I will say that I think the most effective ones that I've worked on, the online conference intersects with the real-world conference, but is not driven by it. So it's not really. I still haven't seen a lot of hybrid conferences that I find particularly compelling, or one that and I will admit I don't know them very well because I haven't been in a hybrid conference that I stayed in for more than 15 minutes. So I go in, I look at it, I watch it, I get bored, I leave. And so I think that the problem is that you really have to where I've seen it work, where I've stayed a little bit longer is when there's an online conference and we're utilizing the speakers from that online conference. And in some cases there is, some of that content is made available, but there's also a ton of stuff that's for the online participants that's specific to them, that is really more formatted for them as well. The number one thing that we do here on the show and the reason we do it on the show is because I've worked on conferences for the last 20 years, is Q&A. Like Q&A is the magic sauce to almost every conference, in my opinion. There's a lot of other things people try to do and they try to structure it. And I, to me, that's all putting lipstick on a pig. It is conferences inherently without the expos are boring. And the thing is that listening to people talk is, for long periods of time is not something people actually do very much. So when you go to a conference, just look around. Look at how many people are texting, emailing, checking other things, doing this. I'm a speaker, so I get to see that, and I can tell you that when I'm speaking, half of the audience is doing something else. When I'm doing Q&A, most of the audience is looking up, and they're paying attention to what's going on because it's changing like popcorn, and everything. And so, what we do here is the basis of that. I think you're much better off in almost any conference, whether it's in person or online. Give everybody the content ahead of time, 1 to 2 weeks ahead of time. Let some of them watch it. 10%, 15% watch it, because those 10 or 15% will drive the conversation. So you open it up and you do a short preview like what we did today. I mean, today is a perfect example of a good session, which is that somebody asked somebody came on and talked for basically 5 to 8 minutes. I think, and then there was Q&A. It was Q&A until it ended, and I think that's far more effective. I mean, if Kyle had come up here and done a 40-minute presentation, I think, that would have been a pretty brutal thing for Kyle and a pretty brutal thing for us. Next question.
This one is from Andy Kokendorfer in Vieira, Florida, USA. Transvideo closes down after 40 years. Any products that you will miss?
I was trying to think of some that I might miss, but I haven't.
I'm burning my brain. I'm like,
I was like, I haven't. When was the last time I owned a Transvideo piece? I think that's why they closed down. Sorry, it's really hard. You get into it, especially when you get into an established business and you have a business that's going on, and other people are coming up with all this new stuff, but you're still making money on what you're doing. It's very hard to innovate inside of that model, and I think that they just probably had trouble doing that. Now, next question.
Alvalhus in Austin, Texas. Can late night shows, Kimmel, Colbert, Fallon, Myers, Stewart, be more successful by leaving late night broadcast TV and platforming somewhere else?
Go ahead, Jason.
I mean, they're always trying. So, the space evolves, and that's just all there is to it. And they will continue to try to evolve just as media continues to evolve.
Go ahead, Chris.
It depends on how you define successful. Are you talking about successful in eyeballs or dollars in your pocket? And I think the bottom line is that television still, so far, makes a whole lot of money. I don't know how, because if you look at the ratings of Kimmel's show, except for the other night, which I read something this morning, they claimed that when he came back after being scolded, he had the highest ratings in 23 years, apparently, which isn't saying much because the ratings for like the last 10 years have been abysmal, like really bad. And so, but somehow he walks away with huge amounts of money. So if you define success as money in your pocket, no, you're not going to make as much money on YouTube unless you're Mr. Beasting it. But I think most TV shows, seems like, get more eyeballs in reruns on YouTube than they do actually on the air, because people today don't plan their life around what time Friends is on.
Yeah, I haven't seen a whole late night show decades.
I mean, just think about the 90s.
It's decades. It's like, yeah, that I've watched a whole show. Almost everything I've watched pretty much since YouTube came out is the funny segments. Like, you kind of feel like, why bother with the rest of the show, because it's mostly junk.
I mean, think about the early 90s when NBC used to have must-see TV. There's nothing that is must-see TV anymore. And people talk about destination television. Most of the time, it's just disappointment television.
and what's funny is I realized I was talking to someone. I was trying to go back to when did I had cable for about a year at one point in the late aughts, so 08 or 09. I realized I had not had regular TV for 30 years. Like regular broadcast TV for 30 years. And so I feel like and I watch a lot of content. I just don't watch, even back, I was watching DVDs, and then I was watching, other things. And now I just watch, YouTube and Apple TV and Amazon and Netflix. Yeah, go ahead, Nigel.
Yeah, I think Chris said much of what I was going to say. My only net add is I think there's a really interesting A/B test that's happening now that get over the, for at least for Kimmel, the sort of watch back. As it settles into a pace, ABC now has a third, 40% of its network not showing Kimmel and 60% showing. And if the network, the station's not showing Kimmel, either make the same amount of money or more by not showing him, I think that will be a very big signal to the rest of the network. So I think this is a real interesting A/B test.
Yeah, and I'm not going to get into it too much here, but the situation there that had it removed was very complex, and it's not, and the analysis of what happened is very basic and obtuse.
Or
and so
simplified too.
But by both sides.
Yes.
The issue is that the carriers that took it out, they are asking for exceptions from the FCC. They want to break the FCC rules so that they can expand. And so they're in a fragile situation. It wasn't some open-ended threat from the FCC. It's like, don't expect, the FCC was basically saying, don't expect any favors, because that's what they had to do. It's not like they were going to crash down on anybody. It's much more complex than what you're watching. I'm not going to we're getting pretty close to politics, and I'm happy to talk about it more on Sunday if people jump on. But that we just need to know that what you watched from both sides of this puzzle was obtuse and mostly stupid ideas about what was actually happening. If you dig into what happened there, it's a very complex mess, and so don't take everything you've been watching on TV and just throw it out related to this product, because I watched it and it was just like banging my head against the screen of like, you guys are not talking about what happened, or about what mattered here. Anyway, Alex.
A lot of these shows, they post clips on YouTube that are free, and those clips usually do pretty well. I don't think it would make sense. I don't think they can make the same kind of money if they just put the whole show live as a live stream on YouTube. However, I do think there might potentially be a place in the future. I don't think we're there yet with terrestrial, with broadcasting as it is right now, but I think there may be a place maybe on a service like YouTube TV, which seems to be going pretty successful for Google.
Let's go to the next question.
This one is coming from Aaron Husledge in Durham, North Carolina. What does the panel think of Apple experimenting with iPhone cameras in Friday night baseball broadcasts?
Go ahead, Jason.
Of course they are. Of course they are. They probably have low-key been doing this for, quite a while. So I think it's great. Give it a shot.
Again, Apple is really doubling down on the creator market, because the creator market buys a lot of phones. This is not an insignificant number. It's not the broadcasters that are buying the phones. It's millions and millions and millions of creators that are buying the phones, and that affects influence. It also just sells millions of phones. There's probably, creators may be as much as 5% of the market, of their market. So it's worth it to keep on. And Apple has something. They've invested a bunch of money in the ability to have the technology that Android can't have, or doesn't have, or hasn't invested in, doesn't think is important, which is all the recording technologies and the professional technologies and all these other things. And it sets them apart. It's easy to just keep pushing down on this, because for Samsung and Google to do this would be very difficult. And so they're going to keep on hammering this thing that we're used in the professional area, and you can buy it at home. You can have that. And that's a really tried and true marketing campaign for film, for many other things, is you give it to the professionals, or you do all these experiments, but you have all these rank and file folks that are buying it because they're aspirational. That's, I think, half of Premiere's market. Next question.
And Ray Ramos in Yonkers, New York is asking, what voltage and amps are PoE, PoE++, etc.? Would like to use a power inserter with a PTZ camera that doesn't have PoE, but not sure which inserter to buy.
So I'm not clear, like a PoE that doesn't have, you're in two different problems here. If a PoE that doesn't have PoE, a PTZ without PoE, you need to take it out of the PoE and convert it back to voltage, which can be done. So then you need a converter that's PoE in and it's got a voltage out. And so that's a different problem. If you have a switch without PoE and you're trying to do an inserter, there's TrendNet makes a lot of great ones that I use. I also have another one around here somewhere that I use. It's a little small little router. PoE, I believe, is 15 watts. PoE Plus is 30 watts. PoE Plus is 60 watts, roughly. And they have a bunch of different ranges of voltage from 40 to 57, 50 to 57, 50, like they're in those voltage range. So, but it all depends on what your camera needs. I know that like for the PoE for like an FR7 is PoE++, and it only works with some of the PoE++. So you do have to test it and look at each camera. There's not a generalized answer. Yeah, go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, unless you've got the oldest, I've never seen it on PTZ, straight passive 48 volt PTZ. You can. I'll give you the office hours answer. If you get the biggest one, it will scale. So get the biggest one and it'll always work, but you really should figure this out.
JJ McKenna says the Ubiquiti injectors work great and are easy to pick up with inventory. And one of the things that I've gotten into is building these. Again, TrendNet and a couple other companies build these little tiny switches that are PoE, and they take Euroblocks on the side. And so you can kind of add power to them in a lot of different ways. And I've been using them for some of the mobile kits that I have too, and they're pretty nifty. That's it. Thank you so much. Thank you for all the great questions. Great questions for our guest. We're thinking of doing more of these kinds of things on Friday. Like Friday's kind of the day that we might bring guests on to start with, and start off those. So let us know if you liked it to bring a guest on. I was pretty excited to have Kyle on, and so thank you so much for making him at home and asking all the great questions, and we really appreciate it. And thanks to the panelists for answering the questions and being part of the conversation as well. Of course, we can't do this without you. And thanks to the incredible team on the back end that both for the weekdays as well as the weekends, on Sundays, there's different teams in the evenings putting all of these things together. This is not something that's done automatically. This is not a run-of-the-mill Zoom. It is an incredible team that puts this together every single day. Committed people that aren't making any money. They're just doing this because they love the show. And we just really appreciate everybody's contribution. Today, if we had done this in person, we would have traveled 50,000 miles. That's 81,000 kilometers, and that is 387 million bananas for scale. Now let's go into after hours.
I'm going to make an app that finds my...
I tried to memorize all three numbers before I looked up at the camera, and 397 million. I'm sorry, everybody. I was inaccurate on that last number. It wasn't 387. I missed it.
Got the banana, though. That's what matters. Now I'm going to build an app that makes the banana and then finds it for me.
But I was like, oh, what am I supposed to say after that? All right, let's go into after hours. All right, fine. All right, thanks, everybody. See you later.
See ya. I, too, am going to build an app. Another one.